is because the way that matter and energy move within space-time are inverted. Matter has inertia, energy has opposite inertia. It's radiant. It follows the path of least resistance, just the same as time does.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica show. We are going to be chatting with a longtime listener of the show, Craig Flowers, a little bit later about his theory of everything, which he has been bouncing off us for a couple of years. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. It's a great theory. He's got a lot of good points there, so that's a fun chat, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And we've got another listener of the show. Jessica's going to join us in the intro and talk about some fun stuff. And we've got the one and only Graham. I still get scared. Dunlop. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are you nervous?
No, a little bit. I'm always a little bit nervous.
Like always when we're podcasting, or just in general?
No, just when we're podcasting. Yeah, if I was just talking on my own, I couldn't do it. I need somebody to talk to.
Oh, no. I would just quit.
Yeah. So you want to hear about my latest biohacks, you guys? Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
We don't have
Hey, guys, what's going on?
Hey, good to have you here.
We don't have a Graham biohack jingle.
Can I just tell you?
Let's hear it.
So I'm in a rhythm here. Cold showers, cold and hot alternating showers. It's really helped.
How many?
And, what do you mean?
Like,
just whenever I shower, I do a cold hot, like for 2 or 3 minutes of alternating back and forth. And I'm not eating between. I'm putting 12 hours between meals, like any caloric intake. So I'm on like a daily. What do you call it? Daily fast kind of thing.
Fast?
Yeah.
When does that start?
I've been doing it for 2 weeks. So like I won't. Have you noticed I don't drink coffee in the morning now? I just drink water because I try and go to like 8 or 9.
I see you making your coffee.
Yeah.
So it's overnight, you're fast.
Yeah. So from dinner. When
I see you, you're eating like.
That's because you're
the entire time I see you.
No, but I can.
But that's because I see you in unfast time.
Right. Exactly. So I'm going to make a prediction that we're going in about 5 years, let's say 3 to 6 years, we're going to realize that we're not supposed to be eating 3 meals a day. That we are actually evolved to eat like maybe for a couple of days and then not for a couple of days, or maybe even once a day, or all these. We've been developed and pushed into eating like 3 of these big meals a day, and they're going to do enough scientific evidence that'll show us that that's not good.
I don't eat 3 meals a day.
I know you're abnormal.
I eat lunch sometimes, and mostly it's just dinner, and then I graze in the evening. So you could say I do the 12-hour fast all the time.
Yeah, you probably do, yeah.
That's why I'm in such peak physical condition.
Have you heard about that, Jessica, at all?
Yes, I've definitely heard about intermittent fasting. I wanted to say that if you were doing it every single day, only 12 hours, I think that's how you get diabetes.
Oh, boy, I better look into that.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with your blood sugar. So sorry to
giving himself diabetes.
What if you're not eating a lot of sugar? And so that's not just, it's not like I'm, eating cake all day and then leaving it for 12 hours, but.
Right. It's not like it doesn't, I think it actually has to do with keeping, as you get older, when you put your body through more stress like that, more ups and downs, blood sugar high, blood sugar low. I think it's harder for it to bounce back,
Oh, that's what it, okay. That's interesting. Because what they did is they took a bunch of people that were eating, they snack at night. So they start caloric intake really early in the morning and they snack at night until they go to bed, and your body doesn't have this natural fast, right? Because you only go like 6 or 7 hours between eating. And they got people to squish that time into 12 hours. And some people even do more, into like 15, and they felt way better, and they lost a bunch of weight and all this good results. So,
yeah, I think.
Then they did it for a year and they died.
No, all heading that way. No, but I think if you're young, you can jumpstart your organs and your metabolism that way, and kind of get things going and give it a restart. I think if you're getting older, Graham, you might,
Sounds like there's a hint in there.
No,
So
I'm
young as
actually,
in like 40s? Young as in
engaged,
young
so,
40s or? Yeah.
yeah.
I feel
so,
young.
but-
Does that count?
So you have a heart attack.
I feel young.
And everyone would be like,
So I got to say, the best thing about doing this podcast has been meeting people and meeting guests and meeting listeners and meeting local people that I can talk to about all kinds of this stuff. Like, I didn't even realize how much of stuff I was interested in until we started doing the podcast, and it really became clear. And I don't really have a lot of people in my normal life that I can chat with. So, ironically, Craig Flowers, our guest today, was one of our listeners, and he's been emailing us his theories back and forth on it. We had him on the show, and now it's good timing to have another listener on, you, Jessica. And like I said, it's been my favorite part of this is meeting people. And it seems like there's a whole community of open-minded people that aren't really, polarized or dogmatic about their views. And we talk about UFOs and ghosts and consciousness. And I really like your take on some of that.
Yeah, the other day, I think I was listening to, who does Where Did the Road Go? Is that Joshua Cutchin?
yeah.
And I think he said something about he had a basket of interesting if it was true. And,
Yeah.
I kind of smacked my forehead. Like, that's exactly how I look at everything, because I've had some weird experiences, and then I've had some interesting career experiences, and I definitely had the chance to see firsthand that things are not always that easy or that surface, and there's always more to the story. And then, like I said earlier when we were chit-chatting, nobody wants to hear that, or very few people. And so you find yourself at cocktail parties smiling and holding back all the time. So yeah, it's like when I listen to podcasts, I started back in like 2004, I guess. And
Wow.
It was like all the friends that I didn't have, all the people talking about the things that I was thinking about. Like, thank goodness I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I remember saying to people, and this is 6 or 7 years ago with podcasts. I mean, I was saying, if you want to learn about anything, or if you want to hear people talking about anything at all, you can just search it and listen to it on a podcast. It was amazing.
There's always some expert, somebody who studied something for 20 years and they wrote a book, and then somebody's interviewing them, and you can listen to them speak, and they'll talk, like, they're so happy to talk about, this thing they spend so much time on. You end up getting a lot out of it, and then you do your own research, and then you'll hear somebody else talk about something completely different. And because you don't have, you're not like going for your graduate degree and trying to please a bunch of, professors or whatever, you're free to put these two things together and go, wait a second, I think I see a connection there.
Yeah.
That might have been missed, or maybe you're putting together things that don't really go. But anyway, you hope that you're getting onto something, a bigger picture, and you're filling in the puzzle pieces, which it sounds like. So the gentleman who was on earlier, it sounds like he had a theory of everything too, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Technically, it'll be on later.
Yeah, it'll be on after we chat here. And it was about time being more of a particle of quanta, or I don't even know how to say it properly, a quanta. But it was interesting because he had sort of rejigged the whole equation, and it includes time in it, and it's just really fascinating. And he had an experience, and he had a download experience that sort of gave him this idea, and then it took sort of years for him to externalize that theory onto paper. And it was sort of, again, coming from this experience.
But, what's great about that is that even if he's not exactly right, whatever ideas he's had that he starts to talk about and relate, it'll spark somebody else to think something else that, could be provable in an experiment, it's the free flow of ideas that really counts.
Exactly. And that's what you were talking about, the power of this, right? The power that we have of talking about these things openly, right?
Yeah, for sure. Although the other day, about 2 weeks ago, when things started to kind of go sideways, I live in Los Angeles, but I'm not from here. And I was talking to somebody who works in local government, and I was like, what is going on? I'm like, are people talking about what's happening? Or, and they said to me, people are talking, but they're whispering because they don't want to offend anybody, which is exactly LA. Like, and so that's a further, like, yet another, isolation bubble where, like, there's no one to talk about current events with, where if I were, say in New York or something, people would be like yelling, you'd be arguing with your cab driver about it, like here, nothing.
Isn't there some weird things about LA too? You're mentioning? Do you have any theories brewing on your city?
I do. I've lived here about, like 12 years now. And there's definitely, the land is different. There's some things about history that people don't really understand. Like Los Angeles, went from basically like 1900. It was mostly, I think what's Hollywood, West Hollywood, Culver City, all that. It was mostly like ranches and orchards. And then it, boom, exploded into like more of an actual city. There was, railway and people started doing housing. I mean, it went from like 0 to 100 in 3 seconds. And before that, it was, it became that. It was the Chumash people lived here, right, for I think 13,000 years. And then the Spanish came through, and then the Americans pushed west, and in a very short period of time, we became from reclaimed desert to big suburban sprawl kind of city. And in there, we've got hills and canyons, and there's definitely sort of like earth grid lines. Certain places seem to collect strange deaths and or just, violent car accidents, or like, but not because of maybe the way that the road is, designed, but more just because like, I don't know, like
the area.
They'll like the area, like there's a couple of different stretches of street that have like car accidents, shootings, weird things that you wouldn't have because they're nice neighborhoods, but they happen there, like in that one little spot, maybe there's 2 blocks of, Sunset or something. And you just can't really explain it the longer you live here. There's an area near me that like, there's just a lot of house fires, a lot of different houses, like kind of, just things happen. And then other houses, like they can't seem to get renovated or sold, or it's just bizarre. It's like things get stagnant, and then other places have movement. And there's a story in there somewhere. And we have, I think, here more mysterious, scandalous deaths than I don't know, anywhere else in the U.S. I can't, maybe Chicago, but I don't think so. I think we own it.
Huh. It's funny because there's a couple, every city I live in, like I've lived in Vancouver and Calgary, and there's a street, usually it's a very popular street, which businesses you'd think would have a better chance of succeeding there, but I can't say it, succeeding there.
Succeeding?
And yet there's all these spots, like a corner spot here in Calgary. There's another couple spots on the main road that they seem to turn over all the time. They just can't get their businesses working. I wonder if it's a similar type thing, like something's going on with the energy. And it's just every, one restaurant after another, one bar after another, and they can never make it work.
Yeah, no, there was a place like that that I worked briefly in New York, and then finally the corner, these crazy guys, like literally they were crazy. They bought the place, or they leased it, and they set up their restaurant, and they were the ones to stick. And it definitely had to do with the fact that they were nuts.
And then lately, there's a lot of this occult stuff, from Hollywood being exposed, or at least a little bit more than it was before. So that must be an interesting, change in Hollywood, maybe kind of opening the veil.
I find that so painful and so irritating when people talk about things that they kind of halfway understand. Or they understand it, sometimes it's interesting that they understand it from their perspective, but they make these assumptions about how these things come about. And sometimes I think, first of all, if you're creative, then you probably have come across a bunch of occult ideas, because I think that has something to do with creativity. Mm-hmm. Again, thinking outside the box. Mm-hmm. And then, it's like, what is a cult? And then there is something about the land here that definitely, we have a preponderance of spiritual movements and, all sorts of different centers that have their own little interesting bent look on that. Wow, like so many places just went through my head, and we'll get to them one day. But yeah, like and I think it's sometimes just brushing up against those ideas because they're here, or because this place, being kind of the Wild West, supports that sort of like spiritual exploration. Something about the desert seems to also be maybe like a bit, I don't know, sort of heightens the energy and spirituality. I have no idea. I just know that it's not like this weird. Yes, I'm sure there are people who get together and do rituals. Why not? There are also people who get together and, they have a party and it becomes an unintentional ritual because a bunch of the people there are creative and then somehow they play off each other and then it becomes something. And then, and then there's some intentional stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really happen. The thing that happens here's an anecdote that, is one of those stories that you guys might think is fun. I was at the La Brea Tar Pit a number of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and there was a young lady talking on her cell phone, which was inappropriate in itself. But she was talking to a friend about somebody she was dating, and she was saying, well, she was talking about, his background. She's like, oh, he went to George Washington University, and then he worked for an NGO overseas, and now he's back here and he's working on some project. And I think the implication was that he was either a writer or a producer. And I just started laughing because I was like, she did not hear what she just said. Like, she didn't hear who this guy is or what he really does for a living or, why he might be doing what he's doing for a living or I don't know. And I repeated the story to an acquaintance of mine who's an agent at Creative Artists Agency. And he laughed like I laughed. I didn't have to explain to him what the backstory was. And all he said to me was like, could you tell what project it was? And I was like, no, I couldn't. She didn't say. And he's like, he goes, I got to look it up. So, there is like this tie here, this certain propaganda thing, that happens between the government and that's real, like money comes in, there's certain ideas that are desirable to see in entertainment and in television and in movies or video games or whatever people are working on. And that really does happen. And this girl she's like, I don't know, in her very early 20s. And she didn't understand that she was saying that. And I thought that was hilarious. Huh. So that's kind of how it is.
And what about didn't you have a ghost type experience in LA too? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I've actually had a few. The one that's the big one, it lasted about 2 months. And I'm not comfortable speaking about it kind of right now because, it's like there's people who live there. There are people who knew this person. She passed away actually before I was even born, but there's still people who knew her that are alive. Like it's kind of awkward. It's not really, it's kind of strange. I don't know. And then, I'm sorry, Graham.
No, you don't have to get into it. That's okay.
I mean, there was like a couple, because I emailed you about there was another one up the street. There was a building, an apartment for rent. And I walked in.
Yeah, that's
and I had
the one
the sense of an
about.
older.
Yeah, that's
cool.
About,
yeah, right. Because that was the other one. Kind of falls into the mysterious deaths one. But this
did I read that? I might have even read that one on air actually on a previous show. I'm not sure.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
Because
I see.
Yeah, because I was very like I don't even know if we should say who this person is because it's just so dicey. But
right.
So, yes. So, I went to look at this apartment and I walked in and I had the sense of an older gentleman and I thought, maybe an older gentleman had lived there before, it had become vacated and it was renovated. And everywhere I looked in the apartment, I felt it. And the building itself was really nice. It's very unique. The way it's designed is really unique. I've always been curious about it. So I was really happy to see a vacancy come up. And I was with my son at the time. He was 2.5. And, as I got into the back bedroom, I really had the strong sense of this, like an older guy. And my son runs in the room and he said, Mommy, tell me about the man who works here. And we were alone. And I thought, oh, no. And I just took him by the hand. Because little kids they're really young and they're open and I didn't know what was going on. And we just left. We walked out and I let it go for like 1.5 years. And then there was finally another vacancy sign and I called the number and I spoke to the manager and I asked her about that vacancy and she remembered it. And she said, oh, yes. She's like, no, it was a young person that was living there. There was no old man. And I thought, oh, that's so strange. Okay, well, thank you. And I hung up. And 2 hours later, she called me back and she said, well, actually, she's like, I've been the manager here for like 30 years. And the gentleman who designed the building was an architect, and he used to live here with his wife. And when I first moved in, I used to help. He was getting older in years, and I used to help him around the property, like change light bulbs and do little yard work and stuff. And his name was Old Man Sam. And I thought, oh, she's like, that's the man who worked here, and we went, oh, and so, yeah. So then like note to self, it's not just you who sometimes gets a sense of these things.
Yeah, exactly. You and the little kids.
And dogs.
Were you?
Cats.
And dogs, cats.
Maybe not.
Darren, you have cats.
Yeah, I got cats.
So do I.
Fucking cats.
Darren's got a thing with cats. Actually, he liked my cat Zeus. My cat Zeus he's a hero around here.
I like
now.
my one cat too. Tiberius is pretty cool. He's fat as fuck.
Is he fat?
He's like not even a year old, and he's like,
really?
We're considering if we have to like not have the dish full all the time. All he does is eat and sleep.
So, what were you gonna ask something else, there, Jessica?
No, I was just gonna mention that cats are evil alien overlords, and I'm pretty sure they're actually in charge of everything, and they're just playing us.
Come on. Not my Zeus.
If you have one,
not my Zeus. I did have a weird experience the other night where he was, I think he was licking my face in the middle of the night, and I was dreaming that he was licking my face, and he was, and I woke up, and he was doing what I was dreaming he was doing, and we had this weird moment, and he jumped off me and scratched me on the way out. It was super creepy.
And then he got you to get up and feed him, which is what he was looking for, right?
Yeah, maybe.
That's like me too. Whenever my cats are super affectionate or like being weird, it's always because either the food dish or the water dish is empty.
Really? They know how to get Darren.
Little fuckers.
Yep.
So yeah, well, thanks for joining us, Jessica. We could probably wrap this up now. Darren, do you want to talk about the spiel, or is there anything else you want to mention, Jessica, about all that?
No, I'm great for now. Thank you guys so much for having me. It was so less scary than I, built it up in my mind to be. So thank you.
There you go. Well, yeah, it's nice to have some open-minded conversations with people that listen to the show. It's good to get people involved.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because occasionally you would talk about something, it would spark me, and I would email you, and I really appreciate that you responded. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we try.
That's why we give out Graham's email.
Spam Graham.
Yeah.
No,
I don't even respond to Graham's emails.
When you formulate more of that stuff, maybe we can do this again, or you can. I mean, you're even thinking about writing something down, right? Eventually, and
yeah, we could do a full
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, there's so many, little threads, and they do all kind of lead back together. And it's amazing how, like, you start to research one thing and it just keeps going. And then you get, and that's not appropriate for the Grimerica show. It's too much already.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, you want to try and pare it down. So, yeah, thank you.
No problem. Right on. Darren, you want to do your little spiel?
We can still, we'll just get into it after.
Okay. Well, we'll let you go then, Jessica.
Okay, thanks, guys. Okay. I'm going to ring off.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Which spiel?
The support the show spiel.
Oh.
Are you still recording?
Yes, I'm still recording.
All right.
Darren and Graham,
what are you doing?
Deep.
What are you doing? You're ready. Of course you're ready. 210 episodes, you better have it figured out.
Words to ponder and critique.
I had it here. Yeah, I got it ready, of course. I just wanted to hear the whole jingle. So we made several attempts to follow it, or should I say get closer to it, but the object seemed aware of us, and we were occasionally successful remaining motionless and allowing it to approach us.
Like a T-Rex.
Which it did on several occasions. Each time the object neared us, we experienced radio interference. The object was shaped like a football. The edges, or should I say outside of the object, were clear to us. The glow was emitted by the object, was not a reflection of other lights. That's from California Highway Patrol Officer Charles A. Carson, California, U.S., August 13th, 1960. The object was also witnessed by police officer Stanley Scott. There you have it, buddy.
Huh.
Another good one.
It was okay. Ooh, you looked offended.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you looked a little offended.
I just didn't have time to dig one up from the CIA archives, from the document dump. There's lots in there.
Dump? Are you still going through that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Picking through it?
Yeah.
Right on. Got anything else to get into? Actually, we should do the... No, you got anything else?
Well, I got a really, really interesting synchronicity, a small one.
Sure. Let's do...
Synchronicity, it's time for another installment of the...
So, this is good. So, there's so many recommendations of guests from people, too. It's hard to keep track, but keep sending them to us, because honestly, a lot of times the guests that the listeners have recommended have been the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is from a new subscriber, and after this, we'll thank all the subscribers, or thank you very much for subscribing. You guys have great guests, and the only one I can think of that I'd love to hear with you too is Kathleen Harrison. If you can book her, get her to talk about the female in the salvia plant. She is really magical feminine treasure. You will be shifted after an encounter with her. Nice. I wonder if she heard us talk about the salvia, and that's why that came up.
Ponzi said stay away from the salvia.
Oh, yeah?
He had an army buddy that died from it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I don't have to worry about that, but you might want to stay away from it, Dan.
Not like I was running down to get any or anything like that.
So here's my synchro, and I kid you not. It was Saturday.
I'll be the judge of that.
It was Saturday afternoon last fall. Oh, and remind me, I have a compound of my own little thing to add to this.
Don't wreck it.
I'm just expanding on it.
Don't expand it till after I rate it. Don't wreck it. Don't wreck his synchro.
It was a Saturday afternoon last fall. I drove around running my typical errands, starting with the farmer's market. I noticed this big burly man in the produce section. And then I saw him again when he got beside me in the checkout line. About an hour later, 5 miles from where I saw him first, I looked up from a buffet, and he was across from me getting food. I smiled and thought, how funny. Then about an hour after that, I was at a 4-way stop and looked across, and there he was again. Now I was like, what am I supposed to do with this universe? So I came home and started to prepare soup and wanted to have something on to entertain me. I Googled Cliff High to find one of his latest interviews, and Grimerica came up. What is Grimerica? So I scrolled through your podcast playlist, and lo and behold, there was that man staring back at me. It was Randall Carlson. So I found him on Facebook and wrote him about how I kept running into him over and over, and he never responded. Oh, well, such is life.
That sounds about right.
I still see him, but now I'm too embarrassed to say hello.
Say hello. Randall's great.
Yeah.
It's just his awesome. Brain works differently.
That's why I told her he's not a social media guy. That it's nothing personal.
Forward me that email, because I'll be talking to Randall tomorrow night. That could be.
And but right before I got that email, I had sent Randall, the only time I'd sent them a note in Instagram, Sacred Geo, before I got that email.
And I'm talking to Randall tomorrow.
Yeah. So that's kind of a double compound synchro.
Boom, 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 boom,
that's
boom,
right.
boom, boom. 7.92.
Right on. That's it? 7.92? I thought you would have given him more than that.
Nah.
That's pretty crazy.
You must be in Atlanta, though.
Imagine seeing somebody like 4 times a day and then finding them on a podcast after. Just imagine that.
Yeah,
how that would feel. And that's how they found Grimerica.
What did you think of the Randall Carlson episode?
I don't know, but there's 4 of them to choose from.
Interesting to know how she maybe she needs to listen to that episode because she has something to add. Or
yeah, maybe
build upon Randall's work. Or
yeah,
he.
Maybe.
Is it a he or she? I missed that.
Diane, is she?
She.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, thanks for the great email.
Absolutely. Send them along over to Spam and Gramming. And support the show, of course. We got a bunch of new listeners lately, so that's always good to see. That means a bunch of you guys are patting people on the back and spreading the word about the show, which is awesome. Keep doing that.
Yeah, it helps pay the bills, the monthly bills.
Yeah, and we've got a few new subscribers, so that's always awesome. You know, I always wonder if we should we be mentioning people or...
Well, I don't know, but if people want to be mentioned or they think they should be, just let us know, and maybe we'll fit. We haven't really been doing that.
No, we never have, but we do. I mean, we have a ton of people that have been supporting us for years.
Yeah.
On a monthly basis, and honestly, if it wasn't for those people, the show probably wouldn't be going at this point.
No, it's just too much of an expense, really.
Yeah, and I mean, then, we took on a bunch of extra things, too, and of course, the only way we could have done that or expanded or paid for other services and widgets and add-ons and that is with the support of you guys. So you guys really are the guys who make the show possible.
Yeah, and we don't want to have ads, and we don't want to do the paywall.
No, we don't want to get into that. At the same time, we have, bills to pay and ideas for growth in the future that we can get into with your support, and maybe get a new web page one day and an app and all sorts of stuff that we just can't do yet, but we'll get there one day.
Yeah,
you guys' help. So check out grimerica.ca/support. There's a bunch of different options there. $1 a show is all we ask. That's the $5 a month plan. It is the most popular, but we've got everything on the website from $1 through $30 a month. And of course, I can send you a custom number if you want a custom, and you can do a one-time donation there as well. And if you can't support us financially, that's fine too. You can spam gram your stories, your synchros. You can review the show. You can sign people up for the newsletter, including yourself.
There's some cool shirt designs too, and I'm out of almost out of them. So they can go to there's a Grimerica.ca/swag, and that'll take you to Redbubble, and you can get it just shipped directly from there, and then we get a tiny percentage of that.
I just spent like $70 or $60 on stickers.
Oh yeah, really?
Well, I wanted to have a bunch for when we go down to Washington.
Oh yeah, cool.
So I ordered a bunch. They're supposed to be here I think the third is the last.
Should
day.
You mention that too then? The trip to Washington?
Oh, yeah.
We're supposed to do that?
That's right. We are supposed to do that. So we're heading down to Washington the weekend of March 3rd to 5th. We're staying at a cabin there. Cabin in the woods. Might get killed. Who knows? No, it should be good. Big thanks to Cy there. So we're heading down there, and we're thinking that maybe on that Saturday afternoon we might do some sort of a meetup if anyone's interested. So far there's been zero interest, so... But, I mean, it won't take much.
We're kind of just going there to meet a bunch of guys.
Yeah, we're just going there to hang out anyway. So even if there's only a couple, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then, So if you're in the anywhere within driving distance of Spokane, let us know. Maybe we can work out something there. And, do a meetup or something like that. I've never really done one. Could be weird.
Yeah, I've done lots.
Not where you were the meter, though.
No, not really. Not really.
That's where it gets weird.
Yeah, and thanks so much to Jessica, too, for coming on, and Craig Flowers.
Craig Flowers.
Yeah, and thank you for listening.
Yeah. Enjoy the chat, guys.
right, tonight we've got sort of a special episode. We've got Craig Flowers here. He's a longtime listener and first-time guest, as he said when we got on the phone here. Craig's been forwarding Darren and I some of his work. Basically, it's called the Heretics Guide to Reality. I believe that's what it's called. And he's kind of written a mini book out of this stuff, and it's really interesting concepts about space and time and sort of like a new theory of reality. So we wanted to have Craig on the show to give him a platform for his ideas. And we just thought we'd do that for a change. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Hi, thanks. My honor.
Thanks.
Yeah, I sort of just spammed my way on, didn't I?
Yeah, it can't always happen like that, but hey, why not sometimes?
Yeah, sure, it can always happen like that.
Spamgram works.
If you have a theory as good as Craig's and you spam it to Graham, you'll probably get on the show.
Well, there was definitely...
But Graham is not on board with the reptilian agenda, so you're going to have trouble getting that one past him.
Or the flat Earth.
Or the flat Earth.
Yeah.
Mind you, I keep getting more and more people telling me to do the flat Earth.
I don't know, man. That's a tough one. That's a lose-lose. We lose if we don't have a flat Earth episode, and we lose if we do.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, did you come across that in your research, Craig?
Well, no, I didn't necessarily address it specifically, but I did.
Don't address it if you don't need to. Don't even tip your toes into that water because it's a fucking...
I would say that sometimes something just looks a certain way. If the world looks flat and it's not, and it's round, then sometimes the universe may look like it's expanding and it's actually not.
Well, that's one of the...
You are a round Earth shill, Mr. Craig Flowers.
This is one of the things I wanted to because a couple things really caught my attention, right? Like the universe expansion one, and then the way time behaves was kind of what sort of perked my attention and go, like, maybe we should talk about this a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So those were a couple of ones, and
why don't we start with how you started? Because you said you didn't even really stumble into this stuff until you were almost 30. So do you want to maybe just tell the genesis story of how you even started the groundwork of the theory of everything?
Well,
is that what we're calling it?
Super relativity.
Super relativity. Isn't that taken?
Yeah.
It's not taken on Facebook.
Is the URL taken? Is it a definition that's...
I don't know about the URL. Probably someone's already bought it, I'm sure, yeah. I'm not going to ask. I don't care about the URL.
But that's a good question, though.
Check if it's not taken, I'm going to stow it for you. I'll buy it up for when you change your mind.
So, but have people used that yet, or? I thought it was.
Not as far as I know. Now, you can Google it, and a couple of times the word has been used in a couple of papers.
Okay.
That's about it.
Yeah.
It's not trademarked or anything like that. No. So this whole thing, so it comes about in a flash. Actually, it was the exact same Eureka as all of these other guys describe. Sitting there in the basement, I had an empty basement. I just went down there to think and kind of be alone a lot, and it was just like supporting columns and a wooden chair and me, and probably usually like a box of beer, and it just kind of hit me. I wasn't sure. At all how to articulate this for a really, really long time, for a matter of a couple of years. But I did immediately know what I had. And so I kind of walked around in a daze for the next few weeks, just sort of muttering to myself or to whoever might listen for a few minutes. And I recorded a few things onto my phone that I later couldn't make any sense of. And I ended up actually kind of going pretty stir crazy about it. I ended up quitting my job. Just kind of sitting alone for a couple of years, pacing around and thinking about it before anything really started to manifest as far as describing what I had experienced, because it was an OBE of a sort, or an NDE, I suppose, of a sort, like as if I were about to just kind of have an aneurysm and collapse. But instead, my knees kind of gave out a little, and an instant later, it felt like I had been gone for an infinity and just seen everything from the outside. And so I kind of knew in that instant that, the whole direction of life had just completely changed, because I had started out, sort of accelerated, I guess, in school, but really early on just turned to drugs and alcohol and just lost all interest in anything. Mm-hmm. So, when it happened, I had basically just a casual Discovery Channel's acquaintance with physics, and that's about the extent of it.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that triggered it at all that you would have thought of, like drugs or alcohol or some sort of fever?
No. Well, there were a couple of weird synchronicities. In fact, that I've been meaning to write you guys about for a couple of years, but they're just so long. But it kind of led up to it in a way, I guess. So the day itself was in March of 2010 when that happened, the sort of like OBE visual that I got. But in 2003, or it was 2011 actually, because 8 years before, in 2003, I was outside and I saw a UFO, and it happened to be in this exact shape. It was directly above my head. Four sort of soft light, like not very well defined edges, like fluorescent lights. Mm-hmm. With one in the center. Mm-hmm. And they were spaced. They seemed to be four separate things, but I'm just I'm like a farmer, from a dirt farm out in the country. We really do live in like a modern equivalent of Tolkien Shire here. So sheltered. It's wonderful in ways. But so I don't know. I just couldn't react. It was too far out of my frame of reference. I couldn't even react at all. I looked away after a second. And then I did a double take, and it was gone, just like that, from directly above my head to gone. And I couldn't tell you, a scalar distance because it was just too quick. But it was there, and it happened. And I just couldn't really even think about it for the next few years.
So was it like a flat triangle, like you see all these massive black triangles, or was it more like that graphic in your paper, which is the tetrahedral shape, like a pyramid kind of?
Well, it would be just four sort of disjointed lights directly above me. I couldn't see a third dimension of them.
Right.
It was just a triangle.
How big was it?
And well, it could have been. Now, let's say if it was
like
only maybe
relative to you, the size of a quarter, or
it was pretty small. It was real. It looked like it was probably really far up, a couple of miles. And if it were 50 feet, it would have had to have been 100 yards up or more. So it was pretty small, but I could see that those four lights were disjointed. They weren't one craft. I could see that much, and that they didn't have any detail. Yeah, they were just in a formation, and then they were gone. Just bam, just gone. And so I couldn't even address it in my own worldview, I guess, until all these years later. But then now there's a third one, and this happened when I was about 12 years old. I'm half Indian, so I grew up on the reservation in Wyoming, and things work a little bit differently there. My cousin was leaving town, and I was about 12 years old, and thought, well, okay, so give me he owed me $13 because I bought him a CD, so I said, well, give me a tattoo then, and we'll call it even. So he gives me a little tattoo here on my thigh. At the time, I had just discovered and I still to this day have an unhealthy obsession with Led Zeppelin. So I just thought, nice. I'll make a little amalgam of the little signs that they use for their names.
Zozo, that one? Or?
Right, yeah. And so I was a drummer and a bassist at the time. So I did the two signs together, which does happen to be this, it's used for all kinds of things. It's the kind of radioactive symbol. It's an equilateral triangle with a central point, but using circles instead of lines, right?
Huh.
So now I have this kind of half flower of life, right? If you take, how if you take 6 circles around a central circle, you have a flower of life. We'll take 3 of those out, and you have this triangle with the central point. So I happen to have that on my thigh, and then I happen to see it in the sky, and then one day down in the basement, it just kind of pops into my head.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So I've always kind of considered it to be more like a gift or even a burden than a creation or I don't think I credit myself with that idea.
I'm just tripping a little bit here. I have that exact symbol and a piece of paper on my car from a meeting that I had today.
Go get it.
Yeah.
No, I can't go get it.
I know.
But I should.
You should go get it. Why can't you go get it?
Because it's confidential.
What do you mean it's confidential?
It's confidential paperwork, but I could show you because that's fucking crazy. The thing you just drew there, like this is exactly what I saw a presentation on today.
For work?
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm you can show me.
I should go get it.
Yeah.
Should I do it now?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll go now.
Okay.
Okay, you guys just talk amongst
You
yourselves.
can continue the story.
Okay. Well, there was a couple of years that went by where I was kind of floundering. I knew I had an idea, but there was nothing to it. And I would draw a little bit. What really finally brought things together was one day I had a beer box, and I cut out an equilateral triangle. I can't remember how. I had some particular length that I wanted. And it was, I don't know, for a little project of some unrelated. And I cut out an equilateral triangle on this beer box, and then just kind of, as a afterthought, I bifurcated all three lines on that triangle and folded them. And when it made this perfect tetrahedron, I just could not stop turning it over and over in my hands. And I still have it somewhere to this day. This old Bush 12-pack cans that's been turned into a tetrahedron that just made the whole thing really start to come together for me.
So you used the leftovers from the box to make the tetrahedron? Not the triangle you cut out?
I cut the triangle out of the box, threw the rest of the box away, used the triangle, and there was I don't know, it hadn't occurred to me before, that's perfect octave symmetry, between an equilateral triangle and just bifurcating its sides and creating a third dimension out of it. And they're all self-similar. And I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop turning that over and over. And this is by now it's about probably middle of 2012, and I don't have anything to write down. I don't have much yet.
So yeah, that's kind of weird. So Darren drew the symbol on the table, listening to you talk about your circles, and I was at a presentation today, the 3-circle model, and it's exactly what Darren's drawing on the table. And they had all these papers with the 3 circles. Yeah, I never realized it would be that.
Sacred geometry.
Huh. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so you might call it, like the flower of life, you might call it two of those polarized, maybe. When they're in 2 dimensions anyways. And that's actually probably an important clarifier that I should just get out of the way right away, that I'm not actually like lifting this thing from Nassim Haramein, but boy, have we got a lot of the same ideas. And we come to a lot of the same conclusions. It's just that it's always from different angles, using different math, different approaches.
Yeah. I should mention right off the bat before we get too far, and I think you should be careful with your super relativity name, because there is a .org that talks about the theory of super relativity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, right now.
And so just before you start, that you might. I bet you overlap a lot on it.
Could be.
But yeah, you wouldn't want to be, caught sort of. They might accuse you of plagiarizing their super relativity theory.
Well, right now all we've got is just the declaration of the name in the Heretics Guide to Reality,
exactly.
And then of course a Facebook page, which only went up about like a month ago, and I could always just take down.
No, I mean, you might want to just compete with them. Who knows?
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. This is the early days. This thing's in its infancy. I mean, as a matter of fact, I only really wrote it because I started spamming you guys about it, and I just kind of felt like, I had to get it out to get something for some people to read, and now here we are. So
wow.
I haven't given it much more thought than that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then the day we have you on, I'm learning about the 3-circle model.
Yeah, well, you do kind of see it everywhere. It's pretty universal. I mean, one insight that
you just took my synchro mojo away there.
I didn't, man.
It's okay. Reality fucking kicks ground in the butt all the time.
Well, here's something I just thought of the other day. So parables, right? You take 3 different perspectives with one thing in common to elucidate a fourth sort of coordinate to give it a whole other deeper level of understanding. So the parables that Jesus Christ used and swore by and really held up are actually the structure of the universe. It's very effective.
Where did you go to school? Did you go to public school, or were you taught at home?
Yeah, well, no, I went here, just our little high school. And then I went to an engineering school nearby, a really good one, actually. But I quickly found out I didn't want to be an engineer.
Hmm.
So
seems pretty stuffy.
Yeah, well, it felt sort of slavey to me, like you get none of the creative credit and don't even get paid very well and all these hours. But so I dropped out, and I just kind of never had any interest anymore in doing anything besides just kind of being domestic. I gravitated towards cooking, and I'm happy flipping burgers and, deep frying catfish. And the years keep going by. So I'm not credentialed, and that's one of the reasons why it's been really difficult to get people to actually just delve into it, like just give it a look, let alone informed criticism.
Let's tease everybody a little bit with sort of the end point, like the climax is kind of there's a couple
like
things.
Third chapter?
Yeah, kind of, and then we can get back into sort of how you came up with it.
Well, we do basically try and reconcile pretty much every spiritual tradition. They do all seem to have the one invariable truth in common of the oneness, of the singularity of the universe, that matter, energy, space, and time all derive. And it doesn't. There's nothing more to it. It's just those four in perfect equilibrium. It's oneness diffracted four ways in a tetrahedral hologram. So they talk about all of the fine tuning, down to however many decibel points it is of, all these different things from, the proton mass and, that are required to make physics actually work, that are required to have, gravity work and worlds not just fly apart. And they say, well, this is this great miraculous mystery that we need to ascribe to some culprit, But I say actually what we have is natural resonances in this equilateral relationship between those four aspects. If space, time, matter, and energy are equally relative, interchangeable, then their characteristics are actually perfectly predictable. And what happens is that you start to notice that everything is just a matter of empathy. That if you take your perspective and look through this aperture at whatever it is that you're looking at, there's this aperture that inverts the perspective to make everything become kind of inside out. So matter and in space, they're inversions through this aperture of, is it time in that space that you can traverse, or is it energy in that space that knocks you away from it? And all of these four space, matter, time, and energy, their characteristics are reliant upon each other. They're inverted from each other. It's because matter and space are three-dimensional and are tangible, but in inverted ways of each other. Matter is met projectile just like energy is, even though matter is defined by barriers, and energy is defined by lack of stricture. Likewise, space and time are fallen through and passed by rather than being fall upon and smiting and striking things, bearing force, having an inertia. But once again, in inverted ways of each other, space and time. It's all inversions. They're all relative to each other. And we can predict because of that if, for instance, outside matter or energy is required to move matter within space-time, then the inverse dictates that it must take outside matter or energy in order to confine energy within space-time. They're all inversions. And this is because the way that matter and energy move within space-time are inverted. Matter has inertia, energy has opposite inertia. It's radiant. It follows the path of least resistance, just the same as time does. That relationship, they're inverse in a way too. Time being completely intangible, energy following tangents within space. So once you look at all four and all of these four relationships, the way that they kind of all just invert on each other over and over, a really clear picture begins to emerge, and things start to make sense, and you can just extrapolate from that almost to infinity. I mean, I can't think of a question that this thing doesn't answer.
Well, and the new thing to this, or the main component to this, is time, right? That it's interesting when I heard you describe time, because I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, and Darren's a little bit more fascinated by time. But the way time is like a matter. It's like a new type of matter in a way. Or not, I shouldn't say matter because you're using matter in the equation, but it's physical in some way. Like, why can't there be a quantum of time? Because time is speeding up and slowing down depending on how close it is to matter and energy, right? Or something like that. The way you described it was interesting. It made me think of it in a new way, that how can it be the farther away it is from matter, it's slower. It's almost stopped. And yet, as time gets closer to Earth, let's say, or energy, it speeds up, right?
Yeah, and
is that what it is?
Well, yeah, it speeds up close to Earth, but not by a whole lot. I guess it would be by a whole lot compared to no gravity, no matter. But yeah, supermassive black hole would have, time be moving at a pretty incredible rate.
Mm-hmm.
The closer you get to it.
Well, once again, this also depends on your perspective. When you say time speeding up, we could be talking about
only if you're there.
Yes, durations of time from within the space itself, or what rate of change we observe from the outside within that particular space that's going through those variables. That's right.
That's right, because from the outside you wouldn't see any change at all.
Well, yeah.
Or is it the opposite? You would see a change from the outside, but from the inside you wouldn't see it.
Well, you wouldn't see, I don't think you'd see the change till they came back out. And then they'd be like, you'd be old and they'd be young.
Yeah, but you're talking about a person, right?
Yeah.
Just because that's the usual example, right?
Yeah, what else? Yeah, that's really the only example.
It's the guy. Just a dude in space.
The dude in space.
Black hole.
So the dude in space goes up to the black hole and comes back, and it's been like 10 minutes for him and 100 years for you.
He's like, I'm fine. I'm old, but you're old. I'm fine. Yeah. Okay.
That's the one way you could become younger than me.
How far would I have to go? Tell me, how far I'd have to go and come back.
Closer to the sun. You have to get close. I wonder if you could get maybe close to the sun and do it, but you'd have to hang out there for a couple of years. Or as a bigger object, you could just go quickly. But if something's just a little more gravity of the Earth, if you were next to the sun, time would be, maybe going.
Do you think maybe that's what the secret space program people just take off from the Earth and go away for a while and come back, and then everything's more developed and they haven't aged at all? Wouldn't you want to do that and come back in 100 years?
Because I think fucking speed starts to play a role in it as well. So I think the faster you go, the slower time goes as well.
It's also not a very good way to keep a secret space program futuristic. They'd come back and we'd be ahead of them.
Yeah. True. So is that true about time? Then the faster you go,
the closer you are to something. Yeah. Of course, we're talking huge, massive energies, massive, objects, really exceptional circumstances and situations. But yeah, the closer you are to things. So when you start thinking of time as actually having sort of lengths or durations that exist within space, and they have an interplay and interchange between each other depending on their proximity to the rest of the vacuum. This is where it starts getting very similar to Nassim Haramein's work, because if you look at physics, the very first thing that they did is to put all of the numbers through this renormalization process. They call it the cosmological constant, and it basically it's the thing that makes relativity and quantum mechanics speak different languages, because we have to for everything. Well, I'm talking about everything above the quantum level has to have the numbers fudged for the density of the vacuum of space in order for things to work the way that they work. Now, we use the real density of vacuum of space to do calculations for quantum behavior. But once we're above the molecular level, we have to fudge all the numbers about the vacuum of space, so that our definition of the proton mass, the standard definition of the proton mass, falls way outside of the line of the margin of error of mass for over radius for the distribution of organized matter throughout the universe from all scales, from the entire universe down to the Planck length. Everything follows this straight line of mass over radius. And so Nassim took out the renormalization process, went ahead and used the numbers, even though it means that the density of the vacuum is effectively infinity. And we just have to just come to terms with that and just admit it, which, by the way, nobody really has ever explained to me why physicists' heads explode when they get an infinity. I don't get that. I don't know why. But, okay, so...
This is where Nassim says that the mass of the proton equals the mass of the universe or whatever, right?
Yes, right.
I remember that from the presentation. Like, I went to like a 3-hour presentation. I was taking all these notes, and like it was a brilliant presentation. It made so much sense at the time, and I came back to the igloo trying to explain. It was just a gibberish.
Sound like the teacher peanuts.
Oh, you went and saw him live?
Yeah, he was in Calgary, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he stayed up on stage extra long. Like, there was supposed to be a panel afterwards, but he just took the rest of the day. And, well, not the rest of the day, but he kind of ruined the schedule. But everybody was just enthralled. It was really good.
Well, I'm pretty sure his standard talk is about 8 hours. So
yeah. So
it's quite a show.
Yeah, this was only...
I only have about 2-3 hours maybe of material, and that's all I got.
So continue on with that thing before I interrupt you then about the proton or getting...
Okay, well, so so Nassim kind of did a lot of the hard work for me when he took out the renormalization process, especially considering that I don't really approach it from a level of formulas and math, because I just sort of think of them as lacking a dimension compared to geometry when it comes to, purveying what's really going on. We can really miss some big things. I mean, even pi just goes on forever when really it's one of the most simple things there is. So he proves that the vacuum really is nearly infinitely dense, that the proton happens to have the exact right density to be the border, between relativistic and quantum mechanics, but also that it happens to be the right exact size I'm trying to think of the name of this guy's effect. It's the repellent force between two protons, Coulomb effect. So the Coulomb force, yes, the proton happens to be the exact right density to contain the mass of the entire universe, spinning at exactly the speed of light, the right size to overcome the repellent Coulomb force, exactly the right size, for all of these things, and they say that it's some miracle. Well, I think it's just a product of scale matching scale and harmonizing.
Fractal?
The photon. Yeah, exactly. The photon is a fractal of the black hole and of suns and of space. And all of those things, they're perfect, precarious, miraculously fine-tuned precision. It doesn't need to be explained away. We don't need to find a culprit behind the fine-tuning of the universe. The multiverse is not full of exotic places where the laws of physics make no sense. Rather, the laws of physics are a direct result of the perfect, balanced equilibrium relationship between those four aspects, space-time, matter, and energy. Always there, always inevitable, always at the same scales and in the same ways and perfectly predictable. Every universe works the same. The proton is the balancing point between two extremes in scale, the Planck length and the entire universe, respectively. That balance being between inverted aspects of reality, Planck length, can also be referred to as Planck time. So the proton is the balancing point between space and time. So it must form a boundary condition between those two aspects. Because remember, in order to form matter, I didn't tell you this yet, but we take the time out of a space and replace it with energy. So a boundary condition constituting the very same inversion that it balances. That's why a proton is the boundary between a quantum of time and a quantum of space. And so you mentioned earlier, why can't we have one quantum of time? Well, we do. We just don't define it that way. We think of it as, the Planck length.
Right.
And I think that's where we've kind of fallen short, is thinking of all of these different things without actually using time. I mean, even the metric system doesn't actually, account for variations in time at scale, because they're just not they don't manifest in our daily life.
Yeah.
No, I think you have to get at least a mile up before you even start changing by like microseconds.
The atomic clock kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, but nonetheless, this whole thing, it goes about.
It has to be adjusted for, though. Like satellites are adjusted for. Yeah,
and super relativity actually goes about, predicting that bend exactly the same way as relativity does.
So where does super relativity start to really separate from relativity?
At the proton. Okay. Or at the molecule. Well, is it bigger than that?
I think really what you can do is you can take the E out of relativity and you look at it as mass times the speed of light squared. And then you take the E out of my formula, which is E equals st over m. So that tells you that mass times the speed of light squared is space-time divided by matter. And that's the crux, is that I'm actually adding another dimension to that formula. I mean, everyone knows Einstein's formula doesn't actually account for energy in motion.
So, Darren, I think what he's saying is that super relativity is combining both of those together, right? Like the traditional quantum physics and
it takes what we've learned about quantum physics over the last 80 years since knowing relativity, and it reconciles the two by adding time to the formula, by saying what we have here when we look at these electrons behaving probabilistically rather than predictably, is that we are working within a single quantum of time, every bit the same as we would be working within a single quantum of matter if we were looking at a proton. It's just that the only reason that nobody has actually empirically broken it down and said this is one time is because we actually call it by another name. We call it the Planck length. And so it's only actually that length and that time under those pressure conditions. If we change the energetic conditions or the energy density, the Planck length can be manipulated to be longer. The Planck time can be manipulated. We just have to know this, relative dynamic between the four and how to manipulate it. Because that's all I'm doing is the exact same approach that Einstein used, which his word for it, of course, in German was Gedanken experiment. Is not his word, but that's what we use for how he came about relativity. Is Gedanken experiment, one word in German. I think it just means thought experiment. It's just approaching it conceptually rather than analytically, and that's what he did. And that's what I'm doing, but with the advantage of 100 years worth of knowledge. So we reconceptualize relativity from the very ground up, and we don't actually disagree with any of it. I don't disagree with any of the established laws of physics. Just certain things about the standard model and things like that.
Well, and you've come across a bunch of things as well that you might consider dogma. Like
Okay, let me just see if I've got this.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I've got my head wrapped around this properly. So basically, we're saying that the main difference between relativity and quantum mechanics is that when you get down to that small of a level, there's not enough matter present. Like it's changing the way time's reacting.
Oh well, almost. But it's because of looking in such a small space.
Oh, because you're looking in such a So it's kind of like a spread out thing. So it's kind of like if you took a lattice that was 2 by 2 inch by 2 inch squares, and you zoomed up in closer to a 1 inch square, you might not even know that you were looking at a lattice.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can only contain so much time within a certain amount of space. Once we start looking inside,
so it's almost like you're looking through a sheet. Like if you take a really good microscope and point it at a sheet, you can look right through.
I would think of it as like you're almost looking into the future, really, or you're looking into the exact present. Like you're actually watching those electrons as they are deciding
what to. Yeah. You're watching the probability turn into possibility.
And it's only because we're taking in such a small...
No, you're watching the probability turn into reality.
Yeah. Just before it does so.
It's only possibilities.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, it aligns with a lot of things.
Yeah, it does. And actually, there can be said to be quantum, actually, of all four of these, not just of time, that people have been talking about, when they mentioned that computer programming behind the, what was it? Some physicists talk about computer programming behind the universe itself.
So I guess, do you think that
they find this stuff?
Do you think that you're actually looking? So here's a question: when you're looking at this minute section of time that's so small that it's not even really happening yet, I wonder if that can be related to, like, when people first started looking at atoms, they probably thought that nothing was there. Because that central part is, you know what I mean? Like how an atom is like 99.99999% empty space. I wonder if time's like that as well.
Well, yeah, actually, I would say that seeing as how what we observe is that space is nearly infinitely dense and matter is nearly infinitely empty, I would say time is probably nearly infinitely short.
I like it. So
definitely is in the studio.
Yeah, time fucking speeds up in the igloo. It's unbelievable. As soon as you get in here, time goes faster.
And it's a weird Faraday cage design with a bunch of electronics inside it. So there could be some sort of fucking physical attribution to it. We could be like living in a time experiment.
Well, you sound a normal pitch, normal speed from my end.
Don't put us on 3/4 speed.
Well, it's very minute. It's taken over a year for the studio clock to advance 12 minutes. Closer to doomsday.
So try you guys wrap your head around this then, because this is part of the thing that happens with mainstream science comes up with this research, and you've come across some of these as well, Craig, and yet it doesn't become. It takes a while for it to become part of the mainstream paradigm. So this is talking about time again. So there's an article here from Technology Review. It says physicists created the world's first time crystal. So it says they were predicted in 2012. And Craig, you heard about this way back, right? And I just forwarded this to you not too long ago, and you're familiar with it. So does this kind of play into what you're talking about? So it says now researchers have created time crystals for the first time and say they could one day be used as quantum memories. So it says... how much of this should I read? Okay, so crystals are extraordinary objects, not least because of their symmetry. Crystals form repeating patterns that are the same in some directions, but not all directions. That's something of a surprise given that the laws of physics which govern their formation are all in the same direction. That the laws of physics are spatially symmetrical, but crystals are not, is a phenomenon known as symmetry breaking. It comes about not by adding energy to a system, but by taking it away. Indeed, crystals are a manifestation of systems in their lowest energy states. By the laws of physics, but the laws of physics are not only symmetrical in space, but also in time. And that raises an interesting question of whether it's possible to break temporal symmetry in the same way. In other words, is it possible to create time crystals? Today we get an answer thanks to the work of Chris Monroe at the University of Maryland in College Park and a few pals who have created a time crystal in their laboratory for the first time. Now, this has also happened in 2 labs, actually, using different processes.
Wait, don't point at me.
I'm not pointing at you. I'm just holding up 2.
Fingers. What the fuck's a time crystal?
I'm explaining that to you.
No, you're not. You're just saying words.
No, I'm not. Just saying. Well, Craig's going to help explain it. That's why I'm reading this here.
It would make sense that there could be different states of time, just like there's different states of energy and different states of matter.
Okay, hang on, let me finish. This is the paragraph here. The basic process for making time crystals is straightforward. The idea is to create a quantum system, such as a group of ions arranged in a ring, and then cool them until they are at their lowest energy state. In these circumstances, the laws of physics would suggest that the ring should be perfectly stationary. But if time symmetry were broken, then the ring could vary periodically in time. In other words, it would rotate. Of course, it would never be possible to extract energy from this motion. That would violate the conservation of energy. But the temporal symmetry breaking would manifest itself in this repeating motion in time, just as spatial symmetry breaking manifests itself as repeating patterns in space. That's the theory, but in the real world, things are not quite as simple. The main problem is that the quantum world is not governed by time-dependent variables. So time symmetry cannot be broken on this scale. So in ordinary circumstances, cooling a ring of irons to their lowest energy state would leave them stationary. But there are circumstances in which quantum systems do evolve over time. Monroe and company have focused on these quantum systems that are not in equilibrium. Their quantum system is a line of ytterbium ions with spins that interact with each other. Then the interaction leads to a special kind of behavior. So anyways, I could keep going on and on, but I think Craig could probably even help us out on this one.
Those sound like they're a completely different kind, too, a completely different kind of effect. I mean, this is where, and this is one of the earlier concepts from this theory, and I do wish that I had a little bit better language for it, but this is where I always talk about 3 dimensions of time. That if you just imagine all 4 of those colors, or all 4 of the, we have this graphic that I like to refer to that nobody can see, but if you think of the 4 aspects of reality as being equal.
Well, let's explain what the graphic is, because it's pretty cool.
Yes, it is cool. It's a tetrahedron, but it's in 3 dimensions and fractally. So it's just a big tetrahedron with a tetrahedron on top and one on each of the 3 bottom corners. And each of those 4 tetrahedrons is self-similar, contains a top one and then a bottom 3. And then within each of those, and this just goes up and down forever, except on the largest boundary condition, we approach the corners, each of the 4 corners of the tetrahedron with increasing color. Of 4 opposing colors on the color wheel, and each of them can represent one of the 4 aspects. Whatever you want, yellow would be time or what have you. And so this would mean that there are 12 dimensions, but they're kind of not very related to each other. I mean, at least you can't. I mean, they're sort of the same thing happening. You almost have to wonder if there are 4 universes from the same 4 aspects of time somehow, like you really can grow throughout time rather than throughout space, as crystals are proving to us. And so you probably can, traverse throughout time as opposed to throughout space 3-dimensionally, not just 2-dimensionally, like traveling quickly around the sun and coming back, not having aged as much, but 3-dimensionally where you can, it's an omniscience, I suppose. And navigate.
I can go see some fucking dinosaurs.
Navigate through time and navigate through every possibility of time too. I mean, we're talking when you say 3 dimensions of time, you encompass so many huge, gigantic, complicated concepts. The multiverse, alternate universes, all probability, everything is all contained within that simple statement: 3 dimensions of time. And
keep going.
If crystals can travel through it, so can we. Right?
Okay, let me finish.
Which means UFOs are future S's.
Yes, as a matter of fact, when you see a UFO propulsion system, you're witnessing negative curvatures of space. So that thing isn't really even moving; it's just surfing. And when it does so, if you had precise enough instruments, you could probably actually measure length contraction in the vessel itself.
So that means you can go to fucking Alpha Centauri, but you're gonna have to be present for every fucking one of those days. Is that what it means? Like, does that mean you could? So that means that almost takes away the idea of actually traveling to other stars. You can only really travel around here through different times. If time's easier to traverse than the universe, and time doesn't seem very easy to traverse, which means traversing the universe becomes fucking crazy.
All you got to do is know how to traverse time.
That's right. But I guess that's what I'm getting at. So if I want to go to some place that, say, will take, 8,000 years to get there, just to shoot out a number. So can time crystals get me there any faster, or can time crystals just make it so that time doesn't pass while I'm going there, but I'm still time might not pass for the rest of the universe, but I'm still living out 8,000 years.
Well, couldn't really speak to, I haven't given any thought to what sort of practical effect these time crystals might have. I just sort of thought of them as a sort of an observational novelty, something that we could use to,
compute for sure.
Okay, so can I?
Yes,
I want to just finish reading this a little bit.
Well, okay.
But you can. Okay, here. Let me finish this off here.
You're out.
No. So it says that interaction leads to a special kind of behavior. One of the strange features of quantum particles is they do not exist in specific locations. Instead, they are smeared out in space, with the chances of them appearing anywhere governed by the laws of probability. But in some circumstances, this can change. For example, a single electron inside a material can interfere with itself in a way that forces it to appear in a single location. This is known as Anderson localization after the physicists who predicted it in the 50s. More recently, physicists have investigated groups of quantum particles that interact with each other in a way that causes them all to become localized. This so-called many-body localization is a delicate state that maintains the quantum particles in an out-of-equilibrium state. In other words, it forces them to be localized, and that's exactly how this chain of ytterbium ions behaves. One of the key properties of these ions is their magnetization or spin, which can be flipped up or down using a laser. So flipping the spin of one ion causes the next one to flip, and so on. These spin interactions then oscillate at a rate that depends on how regularly the laser flips the original spin. In other words, the driving frequency determines the rate of oscillation. But when Monroe and company measured this, they found another effect. These guys discovered that after allowing the system to evolve, the interactions occurred at a rate that was twice the original speed. Since there is no driving force with that period, the only explanation is that time symmetry must have been broken, thereby allowing these longer periods. In other words, Monroe and company created a time crystal. The team went on to measure some of the properties of these crystals. They found, for example, that changing the driving frequency did not change the frequency of the time crystal. This represents the rigidity of the discrete time crystal, they say. And they found other perturbations could eventually destroy the time crystal. When that perturbations are too large, the crystal melts. So, interesting stuff. And I think they're saying that
when does a crystal melt?
If the perturbations, you're just making me say that word again.
What's
when they're too large?
The perturbations? So that means when it's vibrating too much?
Yeah, probably. But I don't think it creates energy. Like, even though they can, the quantum frequency will double.
It doesn't use it either.
Exactly, but it just changes the speed. That's how they know it's changing in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
I can't think of many practical uses, though, other than computing. Like, then you could, all of a sudden, you get to, like, you're computing and...
I know. I can't wrap my head around it either. You're computing in quantum. I mean, your information is retrieved.
That's better than I don't think even quantum computing thought they could get to the point where they're computing at. I mean, never mind light speed.
This is
you're computing at fucking where you. I mean,
tomorrow.
You're computing where you can put the most insane fucking problems you could ever think of, and you get your answers instantaneous.
Yeah,
because it can take a year and go into fucking its time crystal.
Actually, you get them before it
back out.
As you think of the question, the answer's already there.
Well, you'd have to give it the question because it's not reading.
Yeah, it knows you're coming to give it the question, right?
No, this isn't a fucking alien.
Well,
maybe it does. But is a time crystal conscious?
I don't know. I mean, that's one of the questions that I'm skirting around.
Let's say that it's not.
Whether matter is really aware, matter itself, as opposed to metabolizing life.
Well, matter probably just has to be arranged in a certain way.
Well, now it does affect. As far as the observer effect, it does affect the space around it. Matter collapses the vacuum in the nearby space around it, and that's why the time acts differently. So that makes it at least partially aware. All matter, every proton is at least partially aware.
They do say that one of the practical uses might be quantum memory, so it might be more of a like a hard,
What is that?
like a hard drive, like the Akashic records in a tiny crystal kind of thing.
Well, and one thing though that they did say is
The
that
Akashic records aren't in a tiny crystal; they're in the cloud. You jackass.
Not anymore. If you create a memory that can hold it all, then you put it all in there.
No. That's the wrong analogy.
What?
Because the Akashic records is like the cloud. This time crystal would be a physical device.
Yeah, you put the cloud into the crystal because it's got so much
That's not
space.
how it works. You have to channel the crystal. You have to channel the cloud, the Akashic.
Then channel it in then.
Okay, well, how come no one's... So when we have a time crystal, we can download the Akashic records?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Then we can print it out? That's drawing a pretty long bow.
Well, I didn't say print it. You can access it.
That's still drawing a pretty long bow.
Then just connect it to the internet. I mean, then you've got the physical cloud. That's what they're saying is as a robust quantum memory would be like,
Super fast computer.
I guess, yeah.
That's
and
not
anyway,
on the
just
cloud.
a couple of days ago, I saw an article come out that they wrote some AI that was actually better at writing AI than we are.
Oof.
Oh, yeah, that's how it's going to go, for sure. Like, we're going to get to a point where our algorithms just fucking take over and start, because you can already see the beginnings of, like, self-advancing algorithms that can, like...
Well, I think the schism in reality is already manifested this year, at least in my country anyways, I would say. The schism resulting from, of course, the bubble that, Facebook and Google have put us in.
Yeah.
It's all algorithms.
Yep. The filter
Surprise, motherfuckers!
bubble. You've been in a bubble. So,
And you're not happy about it.
Yeah, well, I've been giving people a hard time too. I mean, the fact is that I was really hoping that this whole fiasco was going to delegitimize politics a little bit. It's really involved everyone, actually, in the end.
yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then we lose sight of the fact that the president really doesn't matter much. I mean, he doesn't have much power. He sets maybe the social direction, but that's about it.
Well, we might see. I think that might be proving that wrong because that's the way I always used to think. But I mean, we'll see how much. I think we'll see how much power a president actually has.
We'll definitely see.
But let's stay away from politics because that's losing us listeners. I don't want to go from time quantum Akashic time computing to politics, but it is an interesting analogy. So I wanted to talk about the other couple things that grabbed my attention while you're coming up with this. You might have come across dogma in the scientific world, and I like how you mentioned the difference between the scientific method and the scientific, what did you use, institutions or establishment, right? There's a big difference there. When people bash science, it's not like they're bashing the method, they're bashing the politicization and the funding of, the corruption of the institution or the establishment. But you were mentioning one that really, really caught my attention, which was the universe expansion, right? And Darren, what do you think about this? So if the universe is expanding out constantly, how can they also say that, galaxies are colliding?
Yeah, we see all multitudes of colliding galaxies out there. Andromeda, our nearest neighbors, coming right towards us, but they still peddle us the pennies glued to a balloon analogy. And the two are they're mutually exclusive. And that's just one. I mean, there's so many things like that. It's like we can't see the forest for the trees. If you study something, some of the most obvious things about it are just lost on you. And I think that's the whole reason I was able to come up with this. I had no formal training, no preconceived ideas or notions. I didn't have any emotional attachment to a worldview, nothing like that. My college roommate died, and he was really into this stuff, and I just thought, I'll start really looking, at I'll get the internet. I'll start looking at everything that I can and just write it out, and that's like 5-6 years now. So
Darren, did you catch that? So if the universe is expanding constantly, right, out,
yes,
how can galaxies be colliding? They can't be. If everything's expanding out, they can't bump into each other because everything is expanding out. Mm-hmm. So there's a major contradiction right there between.
Well, it's also expanding into what? Because the universe does obey the conditions set out for the definition of a black hole. So all of space can't have started out the size of a sugar cube and be expanding, because it would be all of space as opposed to unspace.
No, even the guys that are telling you that on the TV, you can tell they don't believe it when they're telling it to you.
On the TV.
But it's not necessarily false. I just think that it's a bit misconstrued. Really, what we're talking about is an extremely even distribution of space, matter, energy, time in the early universe. It was so uniform that you couldn't really differentiate between the four forces. They had to come about. They had to, amalgam slowly out of themselves, differentiate from themselves. This was a very slow process where the universe comes to be. And remember, with inverted perspectives, if you observe something like that happening from the outside, what you're going to witness is an explosion, a Big Bang-sized explosion, as time slowly coalesces into coming to be. And now, as we observe all of these universes supposedly accelerating away from us, looking through vastly empty tracts of space, after we've observed what happens to time in proximity to mass, time goes by faster the closer you are to something. And we think about how far those deep, empty tracts of space are away from anything. And it stands to reason that the actual travel through them would be almost infinitely quick. That you could really go through intergalactic space in a heartbeat. It's extremely efficient because there's no other matter there to throw the vacuum off balance. It's extreme negative curvature throughout huge portions of empty space out there. And this is what creates the illusion of the acceleration, let alone the expansion. All of the lensing done throughout the great vast distances that we observe light going around from distant stars.
Maybe it's all just orbiting something.
Yeah, it's all orbiting itself.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a black hole. It's all self-contained, and it's got all these other black holes in it. They're all self-contained, and they all contain.
Or there's, I've always thought there could just be maybe more to light than we've figured out so far. I mean, because a lot of the the expansion shit comes from the light differentials, right? Blue light versus red light versus. I mean, we could that to me anyway, and I'm fairly ignorant on the matter. But it seems to me like that could easily just be fumbled up somewhere. You know what I mean? That could just be the one thing where someone like yourself is just one day like, hey, wait a second. What the fuck is... And then, boom. I think it's just harder nowadays. Like, I almost think sometimes you would have better, like, the really sweet spot of science and new discovery was like, I don't know when the real church clampdown ended, but sometime between then and the 40s, 30 or 40 years ago.
I think the 40s. Like I was reading
up until like the 70s or the 60s, I think is when it started getting.
I was reading up on
that Johnson Amendment that stops the churches from being politically active. It may have been then.
I was reading up on the Bell Labs, like this called The Idea Factory, this audiobook on the.
But I mean, nowadays it seems like I'm saying like from like fucking 1700 to like 1950, and then it's been a real clampdown on trying to get anything new out.
That's what I'm saying. They had so get this, in 1924, Bell Labs had they had thousands of scientists in Bell Labs in 1924. They had full autonomy to be curious and be creative and just come up with stuff.
Vented interests spring up.
Yeah. And they created all kinds of shit, fiber optics and the transistor and radar and all kinds of shit because they had they had the ability to be in a team environment being creative. And then I think all those, I think that's gone now. I mean, there's all these high-tech labs that are still around, but I think that...
I think that kind of innovation, I mean more the idea of more like theoretical stuff.
Theoretical physics and stuff.
Theoretical physics, which I mean, at the end of the day is really just fucking mathematical philosophy.
That's where I kind of took a different track. I think I went with geometrical philosophy.
Yeah, that's a much better way to fucking put it. Yeah,
I think,
but it's still philosophy.
Yeah, well, technically yes, but it's based on observation, so it's a bit of
that's right. You're right. It's based on observation, so it's better than philosophy.
A little better,
better. But sometimes seeing isn't believing, so that makes it fucking maybe it's worse.
Yeah. Well,
and science still needs philosophy too.
Yeah, that's right.
Just like with Bell Labs, you have, like music is my language. You have, artists who were given creative control, and they were as big as they could get. And then you have artists who are just swarmed by a room full of producers, and they put out records that they can't stand themselves. The institution, every time it gets in the way. And it didn't start. And so everything kind of always starts out like a very pure, sort of innocent garden. And then vested interests spring up. The human hand corrupts everything it touches. Give it a century, and it's an outdated institution. I don't care what it is. So, the science actually has become, as far as I'm concerned, has become what the religion used to be a few hundred years ago. It's puritanical science that we're struggling against.
It's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The science, the academic fucking stronghold of today is as bad as the church was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
except they don't fucking. Well, they don't hang you. They just fucking destroy you.
They just tax you.
They rip you one. I'll be reading all my hate mail. Yeah, send your hate mail to craigflowers13@gmail.com.
So can you explain again? Can we backtrack a little bit to how this happened to you? Like how this process happened? Like you had a little bit of an awakening or something, a couple synchronicities,
mm-hmm.
but did it take a while to formulate this whole thing? Like was it popped into your head and then you had to sort of let it leak out over time? And like
I had to articulate. I had to find it. It felt like it was downloaded to me, like almost like pure telepathy, and there was just simply no code. And that's why it took, there was no Rosetta Stone for me. And that's why it took me, 5 years of just every day thinking about it to get to where I'm at.
You gotta get in touch before I forget with Grant Cameron, who's been talking to people and people that have had these downloads like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that did yours come from? Do you think that there was any chance that it was downloaded through any kind of interference or anything like that?
Well, I couldn't. There's
like
one
any
clue,
missing
one time. There's one little clue that I have, but it's not from that day. It's from the 8 years before when I saw the UFO. And I got home from work and I have a tree that I go and sit in. Smoke a bowl, put my feet in the stream. And I was walking home. It's about a half a mile, and I look up and I see the thing. And within about, I would say, 72 hours of that, I'm driving down the road in this car that I used to have that I never used. It was a purple station wagon. I just thought, I'll take the old car out. And I get a mile down the road, and I encounter a gigantic owl in the middle of the road.
Oh, come on.
No, it was too big for reality. It was not 8 inches. It was not 18 inches. It was 36 inches tall. It was taller than the hood of my car. And it took off. And I just thought, I'm just going to hit this son of a bitch. This is scary. So it took off and just clipped, like the bottoms of its wings and its feet on the top of my car as I drove by, just terrified. And because I know owls aren't supposed to get that big. I don't know what I saw. I know it looked like an owl. And that's the only clue that I have about the whole thing. And I wish that I knew whether there was missing time, but like I said, I couldn't even really address it when it happened.
So that day you went really late to an appointment or anything like that?
Yeah,
where you're going in your purple car?
Yeah, that kind of got in the car. It was just purely spontaneous. Yeah, I wasn't going anywhere. No,
because it can't get much better than the owl. I mean,
I know.
Mike Clelland's work, and that probably overlaps with some of Grant Cameron's work too. I mean, I wonder how many people that Grant Cameron has talked about that have these downloads that have come across an owl.
Well, I wish I knew in either case whether I had missing time. But when I saw the UFO, I was just walking home, and my girlfriend just said, "Hey, dinner's ready." And then when the idea hit me, I was alone in the basement. It felt like an instant to me, like my knees kind of gave out, and I caught myself before falling. But it could have been missing time. I don't know. I wish I did, because all the other
how can
parts
time
are
go
there.
Missing?
The owl is there. The UFO is there. So
you're
how can time go missing? Yeah,
your size, unless you somehow changed unless somehow your scale changed.
Yeah. Well, if you go OBE,
yeah,
I mean, you're not in matter anymore, are you?
Yeah, but time in reality isn't advancing then, is it?
Yeah, in reality it is, yeah.
When you're in your OBE, your body's just lying there twitching out on the fucking floor. No, that can't be how it works, because people can dream for hours and hours and hours and wake up and it's like 3 minutes later.
No, I think that's been debunked.
No.
Passed out. If you pass yourself out, sometimes you can experience a whole day and then wake right back up.
And has it
Not
been
that
a
I've
day? Have you
been
been on the floor for a day? Or have you been on the floor for 5 minutes?
But that's what we're saying. I think
is
time is different there.
But then it's
Then you
not
don't
missing
know.
time.
When you wake up and you... No, that's not missing time.
That's found time. You found
Different.
some extra time.
Missing time is from the abductions.
Well,
right?
An OBE is found time.
Yeah.
You found some time.
Yeah.
You blacked out, and same with, you blacked out for 5 minutes, and it felt like 3 hours, and you figured some shit out, which would be cool.
That was my very first thought when I came to was, it feels like I was there, whatever that was, for all of infinity, and finally just got bored and decided to come back. That's what it felt like.
That's right. But here,
That's
nobody
definitely
would
a lot of found time.
Should we try hang up and get the Skype call back? We're losing our connection here. Have you changed anything on your end, Craig?
Wire. I accidentally unplugged my headphones just a second ago. You want to start over?
Well, that shouldn't be. That shouldn't affect the connection.
I plugged it back in. But these are borrowed. I'll just stop moving around.
No, that seems better now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just sit like this.
Don't move, Craig.
But yeah, Darren, missing time is from the abduction thing, right? Like,
I know.
So that you come back after a
missing
couple
time
hours.
is when you show up and it's been fucking 5 hours and you think it's been a half an hour. An OB would be the opposite.
Yeah, but you can find that missing time through hypnosis. So.
But they're doing that to you. That's not really an effect.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, you got to get in touch with Grant Cameron for sure. I'll get you in touch with him.
Right. I mean, I'm familiar with the name. I know Mike Clellan's work, so I'll find it.
You get in touch with James's mom too. I hope he fucking listens to that one.
Yeah. Sorry, Craig. You just became part of an internal joke.
It's all right. I didn't get caught up enough, I guess, on the episodes I've missed.
No, it's not even part of Grimerica. It's just an ongoing.
Oh, okay.
Me and my buddy are trying to bring back mom jokes.
Mm.
And I drop
good luck with that.
I drop him into the podcast sometimes on him where he can't retaliate.
Okay, well, we have explained a number of things, but there are all kinds of things that we haven't. But we're already over, I think, aren't we?
Well, what are some of the other things that you wanted to touch on?
I don't know. I mean, we can talk about just about anything. We can talk about what makes up molecules, in the way that matter forms.
Yeah, I was going to mention that actually right there, like the pair production thing of the growing Earth theory, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I can't actually speak to pair production. The theory doesn't touch on that at all, but it doesn't deny or confirm it. I mean, it sounds legit enough. I mean,
but isn't that what you're talking about, or what?
Well,
so talk about matter creation at that level, then. Okay,
so in in the Heretics Guide, in case I have to change the name, what you have to do is you take just a cross section of space. Take you a little chunk of space, and within it you have time that you can traverse. You take the time away from that space. You displace it with energy. It's just like Bill Hicks said. It's exactly what Bill Hicks said. That matter is just energy condensed to a slow vibration. So this is written right into the formula in sentence structure. Matter is space-time divided by energy. It makes logical sense. Space-time divided by energy, as in the space and time are taken apart. The time is taken out of that space and displaced by energy. That's what matter is. The definitions actually are coherent, cohesive sentences. Space is matter and energy divided by time. There makes sense. So when you do this, when you displace the time from the inside of this proton this way, you're displacing it to the area around the proton. You see, and that's why it stretches out and it travels faster. And And because of the difference in vacuum density between the proton and the area around it, this proton spins at the speed of light, which means that it does not experience time. It's outside of time, and therefore there's likely only actually one proton. You can wrap your head around that one.
Instead of a wave of a bunch of protons, it's just one proton in an infinite number of places.
Yeah, superlocation.
Wow.
Yeah. That's pretty good, Darren.
Yeah, except it's superlocation for protons instead of for electrons. Because, electrons are only orbiting a proton about
Do you think it could be at that scale, though? Maybe it's just way less protons than you think. I don't think one. One's a bit much.
One what?
One proton.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it could be any number. Who knows?
A couple thousand.
Yeah, it could be a couple thousand for the whole universe. We don't know. We'll probably.
But I think because pair production is more energy, right? It's something to do with the energy of the protons. So it could be that it's got something to do with, I think, the photons. The photons from the sun start interacting with the pressure at the center of the fucking Earth or whatever planet, and when those two things hit each other, they fucking start creating protons.
Photons.
Well,
no, photons and fucking the whatever turn into protons, right? Because protons start turning into, now you're making matter.
I didn't get the details of it. It seemed okay to me, but the thing was, the reason I didn't really look very closely is because you begin to reach a redundancy in values if you actually go with that system. Because, this is something that nobody takes into account. The rate of accretion. Every single day, even now, we take on 100 metric tons of space debris every day, and the rate of accretion increases as you go back in time. And not just increases, but increases exponentially. This is the nature of planetary formation. Our space begins quite undifferentiated, difficult to travel through. It's just another fractal of the beginning of the entire universe.
I think his research is more like you could actually find rifts in the ocean where it's ripping, where it's stretching.
Right. But the point though is that as you go back in time and this amount of mass that we take on every day increases, and you account for periods of bombardment. I mean, the rock itself that took out the dinosaurs had to weigh something, all of this stuff. And then you actually get the numbers right there just from accretion itself to have like 1/6 less gravity 250 million years ago, which, by the way, beginning of the life of dinosaurs, by the way, is actually about 20% of the entire life of the Earth. So that's not really that unreasonable to think that it's expanded that much just from accretion in that time. Now, we don't suffer from it that badly now, but like I said, there's an infinite bell curve going in the past.
It could be both.
Yes, they're not. We really love false dilemmas. They're not mutually exclusive. No, I just thought maybe the math was a bit high, actually. That accretion itself isn't.
Because I think actually, no, his thing was so pair production doesn't kick in. It can't even kick in until accretion gets you to a certain level.
Yeah,
and I think that's what he said is that pair production didn't even start until 65 million years ago or 100 million. It was someplace in the last 150 million years is when pair production actually started on Earth. When Earth got to the point that
where there was enough pressure.
Where there was enough pressure that fucking it turns on.
Yeah, puncture. Well, and we also...
So there's actually a thing here from Britannica that says pair production is a direct conversion of radiant energy to matter. It is one of the principal ways in which high-energy gamma rays are absorbed in matter. For pair production to occur, the electromagnetic energy in a discrete quantity called a photon must be equivalent to the mass of 2 electrons, whatever the fuck that means.
Well, the mass of 2 electrons it's quite small, actually, comparatively. But these are the kind of things, where it must be exactly equivalent. These are the kind of things that the universe actually does for us because of that balanced, perfect equilateral relationship between the 4. That's where photons come from. Exact same thing as the proton being just a boundary condition at the smallest scales between time and space. The photon is the same thing. It's just it's a different iteration, I suppose. We have all different scales, different fractals of the same boundary conditions the universe puts up automatically via the E equals ST over M dynamic. Because the tetrahedron has to be perfect. It will not form if it doesn't have all 3 sides of all 4 triangles equilateral. I'm talking in terms of geometric force. This is the most stable geometry in 3 dimensions. The simplest, the smallest area and smallest volume, and so it's the inverse of the sphere, and that's why you get that 19.47 line on Earth and on Jupiter, all these places with all that action, because every spherical dynamic contains a tetrahedral dynamic within it, and every tetrahedral dynamic contains a spherical dynamic within it. They're polar. And so, this is just another instance of the universe just being nothing but bifurcations, dualities experienced from the middle. Photons, protons, all of them are nothing more than a perfect harmony, a balancing point between the two, where they emerge. Emergence takes place. That's what emergence is when something new springs up. You get a whole new dimension from an interference pattern of some sort. That's what geometry is. Geometry is, emergence from math. If you're talking about the two in terms of which one would I use to describe the universe. And that's why I don't like math for it. I don't use it at all. I don't use numbers. If everything is relative anyway, then it's all just a matter of scale. So if you want to, I know that I say E equals ST over M, energy equals space-time divided by matter, and it seems, pretty esoteric, pretty vague. But if you want to put empirical units in there, you can. It'll work. Because, they say that, this is a circular argument. You can't have a closed system like that. Well, that's what the metric system literally is. A kilogram, I think it is defined as, the weight of a cubic centimeter of water at room temperature or at freezing or boiling. I mean, these are all parameters within the other parameters. Everything that we measure is circular. The measurement problem is real, and we just put it in our pockets and forget about it. And all of it points to this oneness, this sort of super singularity, I suppose.
I think that's a gram. A gram of water is equal to a cubic centimeter.
No. Gram is. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, gram. Okay. Well, still, they're both. It's no better. It's definitely no better than E equals ST over M. They're both circular. I mean, every velocity is just distance over time. Everything out there is just something over something else, and then those other two things are just that thing over the other, and it's all circular.
Huh. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
You gotta make a video. With
Yeah, you could make a very visual video. Probably, you might have to put those four circular equations that are very coherent.
I like it,
and yeah, because to calculate any of those, you just to calculate matter, it's space and time divided by energy. Calculate space, it's matter and energy divided by time.
I like it. I think you're onto something here. But
it does seem to stand on its own.
It's pretty heavy for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
I find it's pretty stuff like that.
It's intense.
Starts to get a lot easier when you can start really making it visual somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know how the fuck you do that. Or you just got to write a book.
Well, I was going to write a book. But the fact is that nobody wants to read this already, and it's only 30 pages. It's really a slog.
Is it only 30 pages? No, it's pretty.
Why don't you edit that out and just make it a giblet? Is that what they call
that
it?
Reminds me. That reminds me. Somewhere. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Actually, I'm kind of stalled on it because I was going to.
Because I mean, for your first interview, you were able to speak about it pretty eloquently.
Yeah.
Like I think you can roll this out and start.
Yeah, we barely touched the surface.
Yeah, you might gain a little traction through us. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But I mean. Yeah, I think it's worth putting down on paper, and I mean, if nothing else, it's almost open source, right?
Yeah, well, sure, yes. There's nothing proprietary about it.
A couple 100,000 people, and all of a sudden you get a couple emails, and
someone will
get on a couple shows, and someone emails you, and they're like, "Hey, I can make this," or you network with someone else who's got an idea that kind of piggybacks off of yours, or you're a missing piece, or they've got a missing piece, or.
Have you thought about going through the Nassim Haramein, the Resonance Academy training program type thing? Or
I have reached out to him a little, but he's sure put up a lot of barriers. I kind of gave up on that a few years ago.
Yeah, he's impossible to get a hold of now. Even the people that organize conferences can't get a hold of him. It's very difficult. So you don't take that personal at all. And I mean,
No,
you can get a hold of his emissaries and stuff like that. But I
have been talking to one of them, yes.
Good,
and also
good.
to the website editor on, I shouldn't say it, but on Graham Hancock's website. We've been talking a little. So
that's good. Good.
I'm a little stalled as far as what medium to go with from here on. But, a visual video would probably be a good thing. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But what I will say is if anybody wants to go and read Relativity, that you probably do need at least go through it twice, probably at least 3 times, actually, because it is so dense and so intense. Because that was the point. I said I have to pack the entire universe into 10 pages. And eventually I couldn't help turning it into 30, but, it's more like 35 now because I went in and wrote a whole bunch today.
Do you have it online?
Yes. There's obviously Super Relativity on Facebook, and the Heretics Guide to Reality also has a Facebook page. Both of those have the link to the actual guide.
And I've got all those links, and I'll put them in the show notes as well.
Okay, yeah.
But sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I've got it embedded in Google Docs at the moment, and I just saw, like yesterday, I think, or the day before, that Google announced that they are doing away with Google Docs. But wherever it ends up, the links will always be in Facebook, Super Relativity, and the Heretics Guide to Reality. Yeah. Which, if you want to remember the Heretics Guide to Reality, it's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm just trying to be clever, because 42. That actually does go a little better with 211, but
true that.
I'm guest 211. It came on and told you all about 42. So go and read the Heretics Guide to Reality. Talk about it, because sharing is caring, and this is not proprietary for me. All I care is revelation. Every time that someone's eyes light up because they see the universe for what it really is for the first time, that's what matters.
A simulation.
Oh, you bet. It could be not. I like to do a kind of inverted Drake's equation on the simulation theory. It's possible but extremely unlikely that we're the only life out there, and it's possible but extremely unlikely that we are not a simulation. And it's just the math.
That's what I think too. I think it's more. I think it's the more conversations I have and form together, it just seems more likely that it's all just a game, man.
And if it turns out that it actually balances itself for you, if you just get the balance right, E equals ST over M, and it creates itself, then simulations are extremely easy to create, aren't they?
That's right.
We don't have to fine-tune anything. We can just put E equals STM into a quantum computer, and there's a universe right there.
Ding, ding.
That's so interesting. So, I mean, I have a feeling that even with like Nassim Haramein's work, I have a feeling that even though yours overlaps with him and you've used a lot of his concepts, I have a feeling that it would be hard to break into that and shift to shift his reality towards yours at all, or how they can incorporate your formulas. Mm-hmm. Like, it might be still difficult, but I mean, I think that's definitely a road that you could go down.
Right now, what I do is just to encourage people to go ahead and learn his stuff and then come back to mine. I mean, I'm not trying to compete or anything. I just want people to. I mean, I know I've seen the light bulb go off in a couple of people, and they're changed people. So.
Yeah, well, it's definitely interesting. I mean, there's enough sort of dogma out there holding us back as well, and there's enough, new evidence that's not taken into account as well. That's constantly, the paradigm's changing so slow.
Yes, and I think that's what frustrates me the most, is that we're not teaching. I mean, I guess you could only really expect propagandist education from a public school system, but nonetheless, it would be nice to just get online science curriculum, at least, rather than 15-year-old books that we inherited from another school.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. I mean, can you imagine looking at a 15-year-old book right now? It's probably stuff that would, imagine learning from that. It'd be out of date already.
I did. We've got 2,000 people in my town.
Really? So you guys were using textbooks that were that old?
Oh yeah, they're bad. They're bad. They may still have some of the ones I graduated in '99. They may still have some of the textbooks from then up here at this school. It's practically just a village. I mean, we really are the Shire. It's very cool. It's sheltered, because the thing is that it's Houston, but it's not Texas. It's Texas County, Missouri. So you can't look it up. So it's just like accidentally through its name, it's this well-kept secret, right?
Nice.
So it's Houston, Texas County, Missouri.
Right. It's really hard to Google.
Wow. Wow.
Like I can't go to Houston, Texas County, Missouri minus Texas. That doesn't work. So, yeah, we're a secret.
That's pretty funny.
And
That is
I
funny.
do feel like that it helped us to be like Shire-like, very Shire-like. We're so simple and innocent here. I mean, it's cute. It's a little insufferable.
Yeah, you're like Frodo.
Yes, of course.
Changing the world.
Yeah, we've got our slack-jawed yokels just like the rest of them, and I feed them catfish all day and come home and think about physics.
There you go. Oh, hey.
Yeah, well, I think you should think about a YouTube channel and getting this stuff, putting forward some physical. Putting some visible presentation together would probably help. I mean,
yeah,
but
my
this
channel's
is
totally related to this. So far, you just have to get onto the Heretics guide, copy that, share it, and when I was hoping, somebody would give me some feedback, and we'll have some ideas from that about where to go from here.
Yeah,
because I was going to write a book, and then I thought,
Well, you're already partway there. I mean, right. It seems like it's more than 30 pages from I've read it a couple times.
37 if you count all the spaces and gaps and pictures, but. It was, should I expand upon this out to 300 pages, or should I take what I've got and just make it a less dense mire so that people can actually read through it a little more easily? Yeah. And then I thought, well, people don't want to read it all. Maybe, radio or podcast interviews and stuff. And then eventually someone will say, hey, I want to draw some designs on graph on a screen over your shoulder while you talk or something. We'll see.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, and thanks for listening. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for listening too.
I'm a huge fan. I hope I can get through my own episode, and we'll see.
Yeah,
first time's tough.
Yeah, warning. No matter what, it sounds really weird. So don't. Yeah, it's very normal.
It takes about 30 episodes before you get used to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck.
All right, well.
It was great. Yeah, it was super. I really like it, and let me know when you got a YouTube channel and all that, and we'll help promote it as far as we can.
Yeah, I'll always keep you guys up to date. It was awesome being on here. I really love how you just took a fan of your show and just listened to him and actually gave him a chance and got him on your show. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, there's nobody else like that. You guys are cool.
Right on. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll help you. We'll help you get the word out there, and it'd be great to get some feedback from people. And by all means, like people send spam Graham or Craig's email. I'll put your email in the show notes if you don't mind, Craig.
Do that, yeah.
And they can get a hold of you directly, and we'll put you in touch with Grant Cameron, because it's interesting how there's also a very spiritual, life-changing aspect to this whole story as well, which adds the whole. It adds so much depth to it for me.
Yeah, and I should mention that too. If you're going to read it, I mean, cause we do touch on a little bit of everything in there. It's only 30-some pages, but we get into the spiritual. We explain it all. So we barely scratched the tip of the iceberg today.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to have you back on again. So
maybe.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot,
guys.
Okay.
Yeah. Ciao for now.
Bye.
That was a chat with Craig Flowers.
That was good. That was fun.
A great one. Yeah, that was fun. Look, I think I really like that idea of time lattice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we picture space-time and gravity working, is you lay down a lattice and you fucking set the ball in it and it rotates around it. I mean, you can get time as the same thing, but on a way smaller scale, and you can actually get to the point where you can look through it. And that would explain why quantum mechanics seem to disobey those laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really an interesting book.
Small fractions, time doesn't apply, only as a whole. That was a good one.
Yeah, that's fun.
Big thanks to Craig for coming to the show. And hey, without our current program of Value for Value, we probably couldn't do this kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Advertisers wouldn't let us just have guys like this on.
Yeah, just publish a show with a listener, like a full show. This isn't just...
Could be the next Einstein.
Yeah.
Yeah, so check out grimerica.ca/support.
No ads or nothing.
No ads, no paywalls, no anything. We've taken the vow of poverty, and we're just going to see it through to the end, through better or for worse. But I have faith. You guys will come around. If you already have, big thanks to the people who do subscribe. There's a bunch of you. You guys truly are the people that produce this show. if it wasn't for you guys paying these bills, we probably wouldn't still be doing this.
No, we couldn't be doing it.
We couldn't afford it with the time and the money constraints. It would just be too much.
Yeah.
At this point, at least not at this level. So big thanks to those of you who don't donate. You should just think about those people, those 50 or 60 people that do support and pay all the monthly bills and keep the things on the rails.
Yeah, and how fun is it to have these fresh conversations about new ideas, like truly fresh, right? Like, I mean, this is, Craig's first time on a podcast, and, we had another fresh idea last week with, what's his name again? That was a good one. Here I am.
What's her name again?
You might have to edit that out.
Was Alan Green?
Alan Green. I always think of the Monkees.
Are we that tight? We have none in the can? Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Of course, if you can't help us out monetarily, check out first grimerica.ca/support. If you can't do that, review the show, rate the show, spam Graham, all that shit. Check the show notes. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you next week.
They make you laugh.